South Wales. The old family holdings. The reason. "150 years in Australia." The interviewer, Wendy, wife of Neil, son of Ken, son of Orb, son of Roland, with two kids, Anne-Marie and Lachlan, looking over Batlow.
That we've been looking forward to for a long, long time. It's a beautiful sunny day down here at Batlow, and everyone's looking forward to this reunion with all Quarmbys. 13 of the original family have all had their names up all around the hall, and Richard and Sarah, of course, were the original ones that first came here.
Okay, we'll just go around to the right. This
Well,
way.
we can go around to the Sarah and Richard were the original ones. They came from Huddersfield over in England, and they came to Australia in 1853, and that's where it all started. We ended up with quite large families, and a lot of them will be represented here today.
Okay, we'll just...
My eldest son, Stuart Quarmby, and he's helping to conduct the proceedings tonight. We'll pan around, and the first of Richard's children was Matilda, the next one Elizabeth, next one Edwin and Walter, and those four children were born at Yakandanda on the goldfields from 1856 onwards. Ezra, Lavinia, Henry, they were born at Kiandra from about 1860s onwards to about 1870, and also Roland. That's the person that we're all descended from, and when they crossed the mountains from Kiandra to Reedy Flat, it was called in those days, Roland was only a baby. And then the other four children, Frederick, Herbert, Albert and Maud, were all born here in Batlow. It's been a very, very large family of Quarmbys that lived here. They owned an enormous amount of land at one stage, but unfortunately there's only a little bit of it owned by Quarmbys now. The Alsana Dothry, which you can see over there under Roland, is made up of one of his children. It's 5 of his children. AR is for Arnold, DO is for Dorothy, TH is for Thelma, AU is for Aubrey, who we are descended from, and RI is Richard. So that involves all the family, and that sign was outside that old home in Sherman for many, many years.
Okay, off you go. I'm Donald Hutton. I'm the son of Hazel Hutton. Hazel, who was previously Hazel Quarmby, part of Ezra family group. We originally had a farm right opposite Honeysuckle, where my mother grew up, just straight across the road. And we had 41 acres there. My dad worked the farm until I was in 11 years old. I was in 6th class at school. I used to go to the Peels Creek School, and by the way, the school was rather crowded when I left. We had 11 children then. Previously we'd had 8. We had every class from first class to first year in that school with one teacher to look after the lot of us.
Amazing.
And that, I used to walk 1 mile every day up to school and a mile back again. Whether it was snow, rain, whatever the weather, made no difference. If I didn't want to go, Mum scolded me and said I had to go, and I still went off to school, at the Girls' Cricket School.
And where did your family move to when you left Batlow?
We moved to Sydney, to the suburb of Burwood. At that time you couldn't get accommodation in 1946 because after the war there was just no accommodation available. The only way was to buy into it. So my dad bought a fruit shop, a run-down fruit shop right outside the Burwood Public School in Condor Street, Burwood. The building itself's no longer there. It's owned by the council, extended the council chambers. But we lived there for 18 months in the flat attached to the back of the shop. I think he paid about 30 bob a week rent for the shop and the house. And at that time, a case of Batlow apples was 30 bob. That's equivalent to $3, you could say. That's what they cost. We had a fruit shop. We sold potatoes, £4 for sixpence, and a quarter-pound block of chocolate, and that was the good Nestle's chocolate. It cost 10p.
Really?
So you can imagine that, about 9 cents in our money today if you look at it.
Very fat people, wasn't it?
No, it was very scarce. Chocolate was very hard to get. It was always kept under the counter only for special customers.
So tell me, when you were growing up, who was the oldest Quarmby relative you can remember meeting?
Well, the oldest Quarmby relative I met was my grandmother, and she died when I was 8 years old because she lived at Honeysuckle. My grandfather Ezra, he died when I was only a few months old, so I certainly didn't know him, even though his T-model Ford stayed in the garage at Honeysuckle for many, many years. That I can remember.
And do you notice any family traits as you look around all the Quarmbys?
Oh, I guess so. They're all pretty similar. You don't have to put your finger on any of them, but they certainly were very involved with the Methodist Church here in Batlow, and they were all involved there. And of course, we used to go to church services at Honeysuckle, which was on once a month. And I can remember the night that my grandmother died. She took a stroke just after the church service when all the family were around.
That was a good time to go, wasn't it, really? Yeah. And is this your first time back?
Oh no, I've been back to Batlow many times. So I come up here every few years to have a look around.
Isn't it?
So.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Yvonne Mills and I live in Mildura. My husband's here with me today, Jim, and I'm descended from Selina Quarmby, and my mother was Matilda Quarmby, and she married Harold Parsons, so I was Yvonne Parsons originally. So that's the whole history of that bit.
And did you ever come from Batlow? Did you live here?
No, but I did visit Batlow years ago. My family came back to Adelaide on holidays because my aunt ran the hospital at Adelaide, and we always came and stayed there for our holidays, and then we'd come up to Batlow to visit the Quarmbys. But the ones that I can remember most were Jane Quarmby, Jane and Edwin Quarmby's family, because Jane was my grandfather's sister as well as Edwin being my grandmother's brother, so they were sort of double cousins. So we visited them more than the others whenever we came on holidays.
Oh, right. So they would have been the oldest Quarmbys that you knew?
Yes. Aunt Jane, she lived until 1954, I think. So I used to come up and visit her. She was a dear old lady, tiny little lady. And her son Harold, I can just remember, he was killed in a shooting accident. He got through a fence and the gun went off. Up here?
Yes.
I lived on Sunnyside, which is one of the first ones when you're coming in from Adelaide and Tumut Way. It's one of the first properties that the Quarmbys had, was Sunnyside, near the Cow and Car.
Yes.
And that was just opposite to where Richard and Sarah first settled, according to what my mother said.
Yes.
And so that when we went up there, she would say, well, that's where my grandparents used to live, across the road. That's as much as I can tell you about the Quarmby part.
Oh, okay. And seeing you've known so many Quarmbys in your lifetime, do you see any family traits, whether physical or
determination, toughness, longevity.
Good.
Good looks?
Oh, yes, good looks too.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And Bob Quarmby,
How does it make you feel?
Proud of their achievements. Yes. You know, when you think how they started and how far they came, and the determination to achieve was the thing.
Just to have 13 children, right?
That's right, yes, and to sort of carve out a living out of this very harsh land, you know, just to chop down the trees. Something that, you know, you think of that before they can start to plough the land, they've got to get rid of the trees, and how you did that with an axe and a saw just amazes me.
And get the stumps out and everything.
And their ability to improvise, you know, they made things out of whatever they had, you know. Yes. And yet they managed to finish up living very graciously, you know, even though they dropped it very in the start. But once they got going, they built themselves nice homes. Yes. They crafted all sorts of things out of their own hands. My grandmother was absolutely marvellous at needlework, all that sort of thing, and her daughters were just the same. And how they did that with the light and oil lamp, it really sort of amazes me. And all sorts of craft work. They used to do tooled leather work and that sort of thing as well, and make all their own jams and preserves and pickles and salt their meat and all those sort of things. And have time to do these other things, you know.
We'd all have starved to death, wouldn't we? We had to do it.
That's right. Yes. They had time to do it all.
And when did your family move away from the mountain?
Well, my grandparents settled in the upper reaches of the Tumut River in Blowry. Yes. And so Selina left Batlow to marry and go down to Tumut. And then when her eldest son married, they took over the farm, and the parents moved into Adelong, and their eldest daughter started the hospital, and they lived at the hospital there. And that my mother and Ida's mother helped Auntie Maud run the hospital until they were married. And then they both had a double wedding in 1928. And my mother married a banker, so we left and toured. I mean, I toured the countryside with her. You know, I went to 5 different primary schools as a banker's daughter, and so we sort of roamed around.
And where did they finally settle?
They finally settled back in Wagga when they retired first, and then they came to live in Mildura because I was there. And then in the last 5 years of their lives, they moved back to Wagga. Because we had an orchard at Mildura and we were out of town. So they came back to Wagga and lived with they had a granny flat with my brother in Wagga, where they had a bit closer to facilities, you know. So they lived the rest of their life in Wagga. So Wagga and all this area has always been a focal point for my family. It's lovely.
Was there apples again in Wagga?
No, oranges.
Oranges have changed. A bit of a change.
We did have apples. We had about 8 acres of apples when we first planted, but we didn't find that it was very successful. One of the varieties developed a gnarl, and it was very difficult to market them as far away at that time from the markets as Mildura was. The apples didn't travel. Keep them in the heat and all of that sort of thing. They got burnt and lots of things like that. So, but we did try. We did try to go out.
Married to Napoleon Bonaparte. They settled here at Reedy Creek, wasn't it?
It's called Jones.
No, Reedy Creek first.
Yes, Paul Jones.
And then when they moved out to Blowring, they bought a property out there and they settled down, and they had 13 children. And my father was the youngest boy, Hector Johnson. Hector Vivian, there's a name for you, if you could find him. When was it? He passed away. Our grandfather.
1902.
Our grandfather passed away, and our grandmother,
She was
95 when she died.
And her name was?
Elizabeth and Johnson.
But she was
And yes, after she married, she was a Quarmby, that's right. And she lived out on the farm at Flowering, and she raised the 13 kids on her own. And she used to make jams and grow vegetables and sell them at the gate. I can remember all that. I remember staying with her a couple of times.
Sorry, what was that?
Walnut.
Oh yeah, it's supposed to be the biggest walnut tree in Australia. There was an English fella came through from Book of Guinness, and he said he was going to enter it. Whether it was, I don't know. That's the story anyhow. But the fella who owns it now cut all the trees down. So greenies, get after it.
We should go and get compensation for that, shouldn't
That's
we?
right.
From the family claim. That's right.
But our family, my father and mother, they moved from Tumut when they got married to Moss Vale, and then they moved out to Mudgee and ended up in a place called Blacktown. And there's 11 children in our family, and they're scattered all around.
There'll be a few here today.
Oh, yeah. Anyhow, Connie can go on from there, she knows.
Thank you. Okay. So, what memories do you have of Grandma Elizabeth?
That she was a little old lady, and I was very much in awe of her. And yes, and I know that in her last years she lived with one of her daughters in Fitzroy Street, Tumut, and 3 aunts lived along the same street there, close together, and they cared for their mother. And she didn't die of any illness, the doctor said. She just shortness of breath. And she used to love duck eggs. And they didn't have any ducks, but there was a neighbour who had a duck, and sometimes he used to get under the fence and lay an egg, and we used to get it and cook it for Grandma. That was one of my favourite things. But I used to love to bring my children to Tumut for holidays, and we used to stay there with Auntie Ella in Fitzroy Street. And I remember one morning I woke up because we came down from Wentworthville, that we didn't have heavy frost there like you do in Tumut, and I woke up very early and I looked down and it was white, beautiful crisp white, and I went out and I woke up my kids and I said, come and walk on this lovely. Auntie Ella thought I was quite mad, but I thought it was something that children should not miss, to feel that lovely crunchy under their... By the way, Auntie Ella was a wonderful cook, and she used to apologise if she had to give you anything that was bought at the shop, because she grew everything herself. And here comes somebody else from our family, Marshall.
We're being interviewed, we're on TV.
Name,
This is Marshall Johnson, son of Fred Johnson.
Son of Fred Johnson, son of Napoleon Bonaparte Johnson.
Yes.
And whereabouts do you live now?
Telling about our
You've
grandfather.
got to keep talking and tell what you know.
What do I know? Well,
Where do you live now?
I live in St Ives in Sydney.
It's amazing.
Napoleon Bonaparte married Elizabeth Ann, whom we met in Tumut. And
What do you remember most?
Married,
Oh, it's all on there, yeah, I'll pick it up from there.
What do you remember most about Elizabeth?
I'm sorry?
What do you remember most about Elizabeth?
Oh, she was a very old lady when I was a boy, and much revered. She was, really strong character.
Very good. And do you notice any traits that are strong in the family, physical or other?
We're all honest, upright people, I suppose.
All very determined.
That's the second person who said
They
that.
had to be because Grandma raising. I mean,
How old was the youngest when Napoleon took
she was born.
She was just
She was
born,
just
a baby.
born, a baby. That was Claire, and here was Grandma left with 13 children.
And the one a babe.
And the oldest was at that time was George. He was 25. The youngest one was just born.
And so
So she was faced with this. So she had to be very firm upright. And she raised them, she did, every one of them.
Yeah, my dad said they had a long table, everybody at the table, and she sat at the end with a stock whip.
She sat at the end with the
Stock whip, and anybody misbehaved, she'd flick them with the stock whip.
I should try that with my kids.
Yeah, that's something you could adopt, yeah, for your family.
That's all.
And that's what we all should be doing.
Yeah,
And
something.
we wouldn't have half the trouble.
Through the sand from the river should live forever because it was such pure and beautiful water, and they kept the butter down there because they didn't have refrigeration, obviously, but anything they wanted to keep cold, they lowered.
And what was the name of that property that the well was on? Do you remember? Very
What's
true.
that? Lowering, well, the Jones's Bridge, where the bridge crossed the river there.
Everyone calls it Johnson's Bridge.
Yeah,
Because Johnson's
both
lived.
sides, yeah.
Both sides.
Jones was only the bloke who built it.
And is it a long time since you've been back here?
I come back quite regularly, yeah.
I was back last year.
I was back early this year, here, actually, one of my cousins died. He was buried here at Matriarch.
Well, thank you all very
Elizabeth, this one here, my name's Daniel, she's descended from both Matilda and Elizabeth. So,
That's amazing.
I'm tied in with the Prowse family and the Werbels. That's been nice.
So you've brought two trees together. Two trees.
Yeah,
Look,
so it's Luke.
this is unique.
Oh, that's right.
Do you think so?
Wait a minute.
And this is Brittany.
Really great.
Cutie.
And where are you all living now? Canberra.
Rugby Canberra.
Oh, okay, so are we. Oh, yeah.
Whereabouts in Canberra are you?
Over in Chisholm.
Okay.
Do you two know you were related? No.
Not until we've been going out for a fair while. Beres mum got the family tree book and they're actually related.
So you related all the way back at sister level?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Man's family stems from Elizabeth, now it's tied in with the
That's amazing.
A lot of surprises. Cousins, kissing cousins.
Kissing cousins. So your kids have got double shock of Quarmby. I wonder what that'll do to them today.
Anne Daniels, yes. I'm the daughter of Joan Prowse, who was the daughter of William John Jack Prowse, who was the eldest son of Matilda and Richard.
Where are you living now?
I'm living in Mudgee now. I've been designated as the family historian, recording all this information and collating all the bits and pieces for the family. I don't remember going to Mount Royal, but I did visit as a child. That's where my grandfather and grandmother lived. I only remember them in Sydney. The stories of my grandfather's coaching days have come down through the family, and that's something that we're very proud of. And we have a lot of information and photos of that.
What did he do with the coaches?
Well, he was a coach proprietor. He used to have the coach runs. He had a mail run, he had a to come around to Murrumba, Tumaga, all that sort of area. I can't just off the top of my head list all the different coaches, but he operated that for about 40 years and then retired to Sydney in 1944.
And so who was the oldest Quarmby you can remember meeting?
Well, the family, well, Jack Prowse, my grandfather, who was the eldest son of Matilda, so he would be here. So
and Matilda had long gone by then?
Yes.
So have you been up to Batlow before?
I have visited before, yes. My son lived in Chimney, he was a policeman in Chimney for some years, and his partner's a descendant of Elizabeth. So I have two little granddaughters here today who
We've got them.
from both. Yes.
We just found them.
Oh, you found them, right?
Yeah, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So this area is sort of William and Coonamun for many years. We did visit this area a lot. My mother's family came from South Gundagai, so the McLeans are there, and that's sort of another connection. And so this is a part of the state that we have visited a lot. We gathered lots of bits and pieces about.
What's your best memories from the older Prouses?
My grandparents, I guess, family was always very important to my grandparents. And as a child, when we go to Sydney, because the other family members lived in Sydney, there was always the family gathering. So Gran and Grandad always had the whole family across. And so I guess the happy times with cousins, aunts and uncles and things like that, it would be the thing that...
Did they all have big families?
No. not when we get down.
too.
The names seem to have got longer and the families have got smaller as we've gone. Yes.
Did any of them talk to you about the old families here, like tell you stories?
Yeah, my mother and my aunt, Honor Prowse, my aunt, certainly was the one who was the family historian. She didn't marry him, so she was the one who sort of kept us all in touch and gathered all the information and things. And since she passed away, that's what 74, it's come to me, that she had. But Mum certainly did. She was very proud of the family and where she grew up, and she talked about a lot and would bring us back to visit the area and say, that's where I went to school and that's where I boarded and that's Auntie Sarah's house in Adelong, sort of, you know, and we sort of visited. But don't go back to the generation below that, though.
No. Do you remember any stories from your grandparents, like they rode the horses or...
My mother used to do a lot of show riding and show jumping in Adelong and things, and she used to ride over the Mingery to her aunt at Gunnery. Apparently this was the story.
That's a very
that was yes, and she used to talk about that. Sort of, you know, so much has been going around. Since I started gathering everything together, I find I haven't slept very well at all, because you go to bed at night and you sort of all the memories come flooding back and stories you've been told.
No skeletons or
Not
slaughtered?
that I'm aware of.
Damn! We need some. And is there any, with your relations, do you see any strong family resemblances or traits?
My youngest brother in particular reminds me very much of my grandfather.
Yes.
So, and I think, well, it was always the joke that the Prowse women are very strong and the kissing cousins, the Prowse cousins, but family was always very important. And I guess, you know, that's come down through the generations. It's domineering women or outspoken women.
I think there's a few of those.
Yeah, a few of those around. Yeah.
Oh, that was lovely. Thank you. Who was it?
Matilda and Richard. Well, at the time that they were gold mining in Kyandra, they had 9 children. 6 were born while they lived in Kyandra. And so there were 9 children. I don't think enough.
Harbison, I'm married to Marshall Johnson, who is the third son of Fred Johnson, who is Elizabeth Quarmby and Napoleon Bonaparte's child, one of their 13 children. This that I wear is a medal that was given to Fred Johnson because he was in the First World War. He was there when von Richthofen was shot down, the Red Baron, and he was one of the Australian light horsemen, because they were over 6 foot tall, who were the honour guard. This medal was presented to him, and I carry it. It's from the Richthofen fight, and it's highly embossed and quite a beautiful piece. But he was part of the honour guard for the funeral. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's fascinating.
I'm Helen Best, and I'm Vera and Charlie Betty's daughter, who was Susan and Walter Quarmby. Vera was their elder daughter, and that's how it all
that's how you came
together. Yeah.
And what have you got here?
This is a Bible that was given to Walter by his Sunday school class, and I don't know what date, but it must be a long time ago, at least 100 years. And I have restored it. It was Mum had it in her thing. I restored it because I do some bookbinding.
It's beautiful.
And I put its men and things I want. This is the original cover, but that's new.
Lovely. You've done a great job.
And I'd like to leave it here so people can look at it and perhaps, you know,
help you out.
Oh, I would like to know when, but it doesn't really matter.
So what's your memories? Who do you remember? Who's the eldest?
I'm the eldest, yes. I remember both Susan and Walter.
Do you
Walter
really?
very well, yes. Because we lived in Condover when I was a child. They used to come up in the winter because that was the most pleasant time of the year in Condover. And they used to stay with us for a couple of months, nearly every winter. And Walter did a whole lot of things. He used to have hysterics to see me digging in the garden because he was a real farmer and liked everything in lovely, neat rows. And my digging was more, you know, a pig digging in the garden. And he used to be horrified about that. But now I remember him very well. Grandfather, we always called him.
Oh,
very
lovely.
fond. And we called Susan Nanny.
Oh, lovely.
So, okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'll leave this at the desk.
I just wanted to ask, do you see any family traits coming through all the Quarmbys or relations you've known?
Sees a family sort of resemblance in features. Yes, yes.
But what about personality?
Well, I don't know many of them, you see. I know my cousin did. Harold Chandler, who hasn't arrived yet. But otherwise, I don't really know very many of them, you see.
Which is what you're about to.
I'll catch up from now on.
How would you describe Walter? How would you describe Walter?
Well, I remember him as being fairly bald and a stocky build. Glasses. He loved playing cricket. He and Herbert, when they lived in Bondi, used to play cricket twice a week. One of them walked from Clovelly to Bondi, the other walked from Bondi to Clovelly alternately. And he was really interested in cricket.
Yes.
Listened to radio was pretty sketchy in those days, but he listened to every match.
That's lovely.
Yes.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Helen.
Okay, right.
Brought up at Lisonsdale and Sunnyside, which was the Edwin and Jane's original home. Now living at Juros Head. What else would you like to know?
What do you remember about your grandparents?
My grandparents, well, I don't remember Edwin because he died before I was born. But Jane lived in the old house on our property for years, so I more or less grew up in knowing her very well and very fond of her. She was a wonderful old lady. The family always referred to her as the mater, and her daughter-in-law was always called her mater.
Really?
Yes.
So she was a strong woman?
Yes, she was only quite small but very strong, very active. She lived about 92, I think.
How old was Edwin when he died?
Now you've got me. About 35? Or yes, about 35 or 39, I'm not sure. But yes.
Yes, that was very young. Was he ill?
Yes, yes. I think, I'm not sure how he died.
And how many?
They had 5. Let me think. Len, Norman, Arthur, who was killed in the First World War. Harold, who was the baby when his father died, and Ollie. 5 boys and 1 girl, Molly, Mary, and she lost one, yes, infancy. But I can tell you a story about the boys.
Please do.
They didn't think it was right to have 5 boys and 1 girl. So they took her down to the duck pond and baptised her Joe. And the boys always called her Joe, but no one else in the family ever called her Joe, only her brothers.
Oh, that's lovely.
I think it's lovely.
That's really lovely. And do you see any family traits or anything strong coming through all the family?
Well, I'd say that Richard is, oh yes, the nose.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, not the hair. Well, not going grey.
Yes.
Early.
Yes.
Because the Quarmby side of my mother was grey early, but the Quarmby side of my father didn't go grey, and I haven't yet. So that was one family trait.
And how old were you when you left here?
I left here in about 73. We moved to Cherwood and then down the coast.
Thank you. And
Surely enough.
over here we have
Barbara. I'm Barbara Price, Swinburne and Joanne Howden, daughter of Isla Swinburne and Eric, and granddaughter of Norman Quarmby, who was, Mum's big all the details on that, Edwin's son. I live in Gilmore Valley. David and I live in Gilmore Valley. I have 2 children, Jennifer and Jeffrey Ray. We've just come back to Gilmore after me being away for about 27 years.
Where were you?
We were in Canberra and been itching to come back for years. So
She feels she's come home.
I grew up on Tumut Road, next door to Edwin and Jane's old place on Lettersdale, and used to ride all over the countryside as a child on horseback, like my mother did. And I remember Jane just when I was very small. I think she died when I was about 4, and I have this memory of an old homemade chair on the back side veranda, and it had doors in the side of the arms where she used to keep her sewing, I guess it was. Is that right? Do you remember that old chair? And she had a magnificent garden with all garden beds and paths all through the garden beds. No lawn, it was just all garden beds, and as a little child playing around those paths and everything and nooks and crannies was really fascinating, and I remember that.
Oh, lovely.
What else?
Did you remember any of the aunties or cousins or anything? Did you have a lot to
Yes,
do
I
with
remember
them?
Harold. We used to visit, and Harold Chandler and Molly, his mother Molly, we used to visit them a lot. Who else? I think because we grew up in Batlow, I remember going into the shop with Uncle Len Quarmby and Jeff and his family. Most of the time, really, I just roamed the countryside on horseback. It was an idyllic childhood, really.
They used to ride from here down to Jugiong in the old days, didn't they?
No, yes, they did. So, but we're delighted to be back again. It's just lovely. It's God's country.
It's beautiful up here. Where?
Grandmother was like.
Yeah.
My husband, we used to go to Wagga to balls a lot. My husband went over to Gran one day and he said, "Oh, we're mad. We're going all the way to Wagga for a ball." And she said, "Huh," which was her greatest swear word. And, "Huh, you're soft. When I was your age, I used to ride my horse side saddle, swim the Tumut River, dance all night at Tumut Plains, change back into my riding clothes, swim the river and come back home. Huh, you're soft."
That's lovely.
Sun ran up.
That's lovely.
Because how long a ride would that have been?
Oh, well, it's right over the range and then across the Tumut River. I've done it, you know.
Oh, gosh.
Might have been a couple of hours.
Oh, yes.
Well, Mum used to ride to school. She rode a horse to school and rode over to, you rode to Peels Creek to that party.
Yes, I probably did. I used to go out round the back of it.
So,
but I'm still going.
We lived in Batlow. We were born in Tumut, and we left Batlow when we were 6, and we lived in Sydney after that. We often come back to Batlow. We have fond memories of Auntie Elsie and Uncle Percy, who are the sons and daughter of Beres Quarmby, and she always made life interesting for us and told us the family history, and from that we developed a knowledge of the family, and we were compiling a book for this family reunion.
So did you have any lovely stories that you remember from them? Did they ever tell you stories about what they got up to or things like that? Nothing famous comes to mind?
Oh, they told us hundreds of stories, but I can't.
They've all gone.
On the spur of the moment, but with our side, like we tried to get them to write their own, so each family, like there's, in Dad's side, there's 12 children, and those 12 children, we've got a book and done the photos on them and got them to write their stories. Because they, like we weren't at Honeysuckle, which was the old family home, we weren't born then, but some of our older cousins were, so we got them to write the stories of Honeysuckle in the olden days.
Oh, lovely. And who was the oldest Quarmby you can remember meeting?
Well, I suppose the oldest one would be Dad's eldest brother, because we didn't meet our grandparents. We didn't meet Ezra and Sue died before he was born. So it's Dad's brothers and sisters. And there's only, of that 12, there's only 3 left now. There's only Ray Quarmby, Millie Lapthorne and Agnes Naylor. Out of that 12.
And then where are they all now?
Well, Uncle Ray is in Wagga, and he's here today.
Is he?
He's 92, 93.
Oh, we'll have to get
and his wife's here. That's his son over there, Robert.
Yeah.
And Auntie Millie, she lives in Wagga, and her daughter's here. She came from South Australia, and she's here today. And Auntie Agnes is living at Springwood. She'll be 90 in May. And she slipped and broke her arm on the Easter weekend, and she's moved into a nursing home just Tuesday, this Tuesday just gone. So they're all getting old, so if you don't capture their stories, we're going to lose them.
That's right, it's so important. So we want you to say who you are and who you're related to for the tape.
You just want to say you're Ray Quarmby and you're Ezra's youngest son. You're the youngest of 7 boys.
That's right.
Well, you tell me. You tell me.
Ray Quarmby, Ezra Quarmby's youngest son. And good looking.
And very good looking.
He's the youngest of 7 boys.
And did he grow up here? Did you grow up here? What was your property called?
Honeysuckle.
You were at Honeysuckle.
And then I had a property of my own. It was Fairview.
Yes. And where are you now? Where do you live now?
In Wagga.
Yeah.
What's your fondest memory of Honeysuckle?
Very good. It's where I started to learn about farming, orcharding and all that sort of stuff. The time I spent there was very good.
Do you remember Richard and Sarah? Your grandparents? Do you remember your grandparents?
Only just.
Did you meet them?
Oh yes, I met them.
Yes.
Only just faint to remember them now.
What's the memory, Bill?
Son of Robert, whose father was Walter and mother was Susan. We reside in WA at a place called Katanning. I was manufactured in West Australia and I was born in Nowra, New South Wales. My father Robert came to WA in 1929 where he met my mother, and they were married in 1935 and I'm the youngest of a family. I had 2 sisters, one Judith and one Diane, and I was born in 1940. Dad served in the armed forces until 45. During that time my mother had bought a chicken farm and orchard with her father, and when Dad returned from the army he worked on the small holding. That was sold in 1946 and we moved to a place called Clackline where they purchased the old Warrenine homestead, which used to be a staging post between northern Perth and York. A very old building, all stone. We have some very fond memories of our time we spent at Clackline. Dad sold Clackline in 1953 and we moved to Brookton, where we spent another 6.5, 7 years there. It's where my middle sister Diane met her husband Jim, and they were married in 1959. Father sold Brookton in 1959, 60, and we moved to the North Midlands at Carew, and that is where my eldest sister Judith met Max Heberden, and they were duly married in 1961. We lived in the Carew Shire until 1976, and during that time I met my wife Sandra, and we were married in 1967. Our eldest son, Gary, was born in 1968. The 70s weren't real good years for our family. I lost both parents within 2 years of one another. 1976, Sandra and I sold the farm and we moved to a place called Armidale, which is a suburb of Perth. We lived there for 5 years. And then we took over the Celtic's distributorship in Katanning in 1981, which we worked for another 10 years. And now we have our own, we've developed our own business for 2 school buses, a farm requisite shop mainly in hydraulics and fertiliser. 2 years ago, the fertiliser company whom we were agents for offered me a job as a manager of the new facility in Albany, which I held that position for 9 months. The position became too big for one man, so they've split the position in 2, and I currently the regional manager for the Great Southern for United Farmer Fertiliser. We have one other child, Peggy. She is also employed by United Farmers in Albany. It looks like she will take up residence there as she's purchased a house, and I spend my time between the business in Katanning and in my employment in Albany.
Oh, good. Any good stories that or fond memories of those in the past of Walter and so?
No, not of Walter. I didn't actually know Walter at all. I knew him when I was. Yeah. I migrated back to WA when I was 3 months old. But look, there's lots of stories, Neil, but none that come to mind readily.
Okay. What about the pipe smoking on the back porch? That sounds like good.
Well, this is a story that did happen during 1940 when Monticello was born here in January. Walter was very set in his ways, and every evening or every lunchtime he would sit on the front porch and smoke his one pipe for the day, and it wouldn't matter whether the house fell down or somebody spoke to him. Walter was completely in a world of his own, resting, enjoying his pipe.
Thank you very much.
Until after 1972. But I was born in 1959, and every day since then, no matter what town I go in, people say, "Do you know Jimmy Quarmby?" This man is known by everybody. I went to a one-horse town once. The bloke didn't know him, but the horse did. And very proud to have this guy as our patriarch, and great little fella. But and it was also funny, being here 30 years after that 1972 reunion, because in 1972 I was my daughter's age, and I was thinking, I hate this. This is awful. There's all these people I don't know, and I'm told a lot of them are Methodists. And I wanted to know why Dad and my brother-in-law kept going outside to the boot of the car and smoked a lot outside. But it has been wonderful for Dad to recapture this relationship with the family, and for us to also know the Cooney side, the Quarmby side, and my mother's side, the Sweeney side, which is also really valuable to us. So it's been wonderful. Thank you.
It's a funny little story that's stuck in my mind over the last 4 years. We were only kids. I come from Henry's side, better known as Harry, and Harry was going through the transition from horses to motor cars, and he purchased an old T-model Ford, and he took me and my brother in the back of the forward, going to Avalon, and coming back up the 5 Mile, she's chugging along and nearly stopped, you know, and he used to help her along by pushing on the steering wheel and going, we were in the back. He was totally deaf, so he couldn't hear the laughing that was going on loud. But we got up the 5 Mile.
Thank you, Charlie. Do we have any more offers? Yes? Okay. Don't forget first name and which part of the family.
Well, my name is Beres Hill, and I'm from Beres Quarmby Roberts. She was a daughter of Herbert, and Helen's my wife. Now, this is a story which goes back to 1965 or 66, and in fact it's with Isla. And Isla, I didn't tell you the other side of the story when this morning when you said hello to me and reminded me. It's something, I guess, I don't know if I'm different to everyone else, but every now and then I have moments when I remember things that I've done that I wish I hadn't done. And oh my God, I think I've done something better, handled a situation better or whatever. These sort of things happen and then I move on. 5 minutes later I've moved on to something else. Anyhow, in one of my memories is one of these situations. 1965 or 66, we stayed with, Helen and I weren't married at that stage. We were courting and we got married in 1966. And we stayed with Isla and her husband Eric at Liddesdale. And we had a wonderful time, ran there for a couple of days, and I remember two things. One, that the packing shed had burnt down, and Eric was very much involved in that, and there was a big insurance claim, and it was replaced for the cost of rebuilding it. It was a very intricate building, and so they got a lot of money out of that. I don't know if anyone else remembers that story, but they got a lot of money returned from the insurance on that thing. The other thing was that we, there for a couple of days, when we left, we'd eaten all their produce, we'd eaten all the things that had come off their land and everything like that. We had a little gift for them, which was a meat tenderizer. And Helen said to me, my wife said to me, it wasn't my wife, but I said, should we give them, look, we've eaten so well, look, they'll think this is an insult to give them a meat tenderizer when we've eaten their meat, meat that comes off their land. So that's stuck in my mind ever since then, and I've worried about it, and I've had these moments. Today, she came up and introduced herself to me, and remember, we came and stayed with us, and on our honeymoon, we weren't quite on our honeymoon, it was a bit before that. She said, and by the way, do you remember that meat tenderizer that you left with? It's wonderful, and I've still got it at Churros Heads, and I love it.
Going back to the 72 reunion, we attended that, and we made friends with Val, the twins, and their father invited us back for dinner following Sunday or Sunday after that. And my father at the time was in a hospital up at Richmond and he could hardly walk, and we went up and we picked him up and virtually carried him out to the car. And, I had my 3 boys as well, and we pulled up at this house in Concord, and I said to the wife, well, here we are, this is where Sam Quarmby lives. And she said, yes, this is it. Yeah, she thinks it's right too. And we got out of the car and I helped my father up the front steps of the house, and we knocked on the door, and this lady came to the door with the rolls in her hair and went there for lunch. And in the meantime, she's pulling the rubbers out. She said, yes, come in, take your father, take him down to the hall. It's much more comfortable down there. So we went down there and we sat him down and we were chatting away a little bit, and they said, excuse us just for a second. And I knew what happened. They'd gone into the other room and he said to her, who are they? And he said, I don't know. I said, I think they were on your side. So you tell me. So he came back and he said, who are you? And I said, who are you? Anyway, we were in the wrong house, and they graciously ushered us back to the front door and told us where we could go to the right house. And I noticed about 3 or 4 weeks later we went past that same house and there was bars up all the windows.
Just reminding me about another little car story that happened. Grandfather decided to upgrade his car, so he traded in the T-model and got another little Ford. I think he must have had a flashback or something. We were down there to see the arrival of the new car, drove into the garage and said, woo, went straight I'm Dad Quarmby from Roland's side. My father was Roland's eldest son, Arnold. In 1915 he was granted a bursary to attend Teachers College to become a one-school teacher. His training started about May 1915 and he completed it in November 1915. And at the age of 18 was sent out to his first school at Argylong. Now, things were pretty tough and the buildings at schools were pretty crooked. And he often had young fellas older than himself to try and teach. It was difficult to get farmers to send their sons to school because they want them home on the farm. The previous teacher had trouble getting them to come and finally got one particular farmer to send their son Willie, and the trouble was Willie didn't bath very often and was a bit dirty and the kids complained. So the teacher sent a note home to the mother, could Willie please have a bath between clothes coming to school. She phoned him next day, going very angry on him sending that note. And she said, my Willie ain't no bloomin' nose. He's there for learning, not for smelling. Dad used to ride the bike from Jewett to Argylong of a Monday morning and back over Friday. He stayed in Argylong for the week. To help him, Rolly loaned him the money to buy a motorbike, which is the first motorbike in the area. So this brought a lot of curiosity. And kids would walk for miles about Monday morning and a Friday night to watch him go past on this strange machine. The problem was the sport was to seal the dogs on it. And this was okay till one dog got his nose in the spokes and over Dad went and broke his wrist. They reckon you have to fix this. And I remember as a kid seeing this, he bought a 22 7-shot revolver. He laid the barrel along that finger and he pulled the trigger with his little finger and he'd fill it with rat cartridges. And he said, I stopped them. Every time they sent the dog at me, I gave them a squirt.
I want to tell you about true love in Backlow. Just a matter of interest, my name's Don Hutton. My mother was Hazel Quarmby, daughter of Ezra. And my dad had a farm out at West Backlow, Peels Creek, as often people knew. I lived there for 11 years, but I never saw a Peels Creek actually. But my story is that when I was about to be born, my mother moved down to Tumut. She stayed with Beres Quarmby because she was close to the hospital. And as a matter of interest, I was born in August. And they had the heaviest snowstorm on record in that particular year. If you want to look back, I'll tell you now it was 1935. And when I was born, my dad got a call to say I'd been born, and he headed off for Tumut with his horse. But the snow was so thick that as time went by, the horse just couldn't manage to get through the snow. So he got somewhere down near Gilmore and the horse just tossed it in. He just couldn't make it any further. So Dad pulled the saddle off, he stuffed it in a hollow log and he walked to Tumut to come and see his son, me.
G'day everybody, I'm Evan. I'm Ken Jones' youngest son. That's my eldest and ugliest brother. That's my third eldest and ugliest brother, and there's another one over there. I was the handsome one. They finally got it right with me.
Shallow into the dream pool.
I've got a little story. It's in 3 parts, and it's one that I grew up with, and a story that I love. Rolly had horses and beasts, and he had a little trick that whenever his horses had some sort of a lesion or anything on them, he would just lance it gently with a knife and put some terps or something similar on it, and that used to cure. In fact, he used to use this knife here, which I've still got. So that's the first part of the story, and that's an interesting thing into itself. The second part of the story becomes a little bit more interesting with my dad, Ken. When he had a little bit of a lesion or something on him, about apparently Rolly took him down to the stables there one day and did a similar thing. Lanced it and put turps on it. Much to the horrification of several people, I can assure you of that. But it gets funnier and gets a little bit more personal because when I first met my darling wife, we were up in the shed there one day. Dad was building his house at the time, and we had the shed built, of course, because the cars had somewhere to go first. And I was sitting up in the shed there, and I know I had a nasty wound on me from work or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but quite offhandedly, Dad said to my darling wife, who wasn't my wife at that stage, we'd only just met, "Put some turps on it." And we thought nothing of it. We had a bit of a laugh and left it at that. And shortly thereafter, I felt an enormous amount of pain in my back. My wife, my girlfriend at the time, had snuck up behind me and done exactly what Dad had said to do, and loaded me up with turps. So shortly thereafter, Dad gave me the little knife as a memento, and it's Riley's knife, and it's nearly worn away, and I carry it with me most times. Sorry?
Except on aeroplanes.
Except on aeroplanes, yes. So that's my threefold story.
Parsons is my name. I'm Lena Quarmby's grandson. Just a couple of little stories. My grandfather, Ned, had to go and register the birth of my aunt, and he was told exactly what he was supposed to do when he got to Adelong. He was to go and register her as Victoria Eloise Alicia. But Ned went and had a quick beer with one of his mates and got down to the registry office a little bit late and in a bit of a panic, and he couldn't remember what the hell he was supposed to call her, so he called her Maud. That was it. I'm a bit interested in some of the history of the Kiandra area, and 50 years ago, actually a little more, 51 years ago, I had a girlfriend up there, Marcia Brayshaw, and her father had built quite a few buildings around Kiandra. He also had built the Church of England there. So I knew a little bit about that from him. And I went up there to a young Anglican conference in 1951, and the minister had everybody assembled in the church. I don't think it's there anymore, but anyway, it was there then. Had everybody assembled in the church in the morning. And he said, "Now I want you people to have a good look around this church." He said, "There's something particular I think you should know about this church." Well, here's my chance to show off how much I know, because I know all about Bradshaw and the church. I'm just dying to get up on my feet. He said, "The reason I want you to have a good look around this church," because he said, "this is the closest most of you people ever get to God. This is the highest church in Australia, 7,324 feet. The smallest baby in New South Wales was born in that hospital at Adelong in the very early part of this century, and the doctor said it's no good, throw a towel over and let it go." And Nurse Lindbeck said, "No way." She said, I'll do my best to raise that baby, and he wouldn't have a bar of it. Anyway, she got to work, and she got a shoebox and some cotton wool, and she whacked him in the shoebox and got an eyedropper, and she fed this little 1 pound child, 1 pound. She fed him with an eyedropper, got him going a little bit. Right, and then she had to go and play the championship golf. So she left her nurse in charge with instructions to feed this baby on the hour with the eyedropper. The nurse has been told by the doctor, forget all about that, let that kid go, throw a towel over it. So the nurse didn't feed it for a few hours while Auntie was out winning the local golf championship. She came back to the hospital, and Samson, as he was called, Samson was blue, just about had it. So Auntie grabbed Samson, shot him in the bottom of the two oven stove, shot him in the bottom of the oven of the stove, got the milk out, got the eyedropper going, and Samson lived to be 56.
It's Doris Whale. My mother was Hazel Quarmby, the daughter of Ezra Quarmby. I lived in Batlow until I was 10, but then moved to Sydney with the family. And a few years after that I went to England and met an Englishman, my husband here, David Whale, and I live in England now and I've been over there 40 years.
And it's lovely to come back for this reunion.
Oh, we're glad you did.
So now you're setting up an English branch of the family back again?
Well, yes, we have two sons.
Two sons and a grandson.
And a grandson.
Do you go up to Huddersfield and have a look
We're
around?
going to when we get back. We don't live very far from there. We live in Staffordshire, Stafford.
Okay.
So we hope to go to Huddersfield and look around and find all the family at home.
And do you remember any of the old ancestors? Did you, when you were living here, meet any of them?
I had yesterday. I did.
But when you were young?
Oh, when I was young. All my aunties on my mother's side and uncles, I've always kept in close contact with them. And over the years, I've visited them, and I've even had one of them come to stay with us in England.
Oh, really? Which one was that?
Auntie Melanie, the youngest of the sisters, she came over and stayed with us. My mother and father have been over and stayed with us too several times. I know them all. So it's nice to keep in contact with everyone.
Oh, we're so glad you made it.
Yeah. Oh yes, we are too.
Yes, we hope you'll do another one.
I hope you do another one before we're too old.
30 more years.
Well, we came to 1972, right?
We came to the 1972. Yes, we've got our family in that photograph there. In 1972, when our youngest was only 18 months.
Oh gosh.
He's now a married man and 31 with a baby.
And do you have any fond memories or funny stories about what they used to get up to, or you used to get up to around Batlow?
I went to Peels Creek School, and that was good fun. I was a teacher's pet, and she used to take me back on the horse, on the back of a horse. My brother here, Don, he had to walk home, but sometimes the teacher took me on the horse, and I had, this is my brother Don.
We've done
it. He walked, but sometimes I got to ride back on the horse.
Oh, lovely.
But yes, it was good fun at the, I like the old school.
Nice way to grow up.
Yes.
Thank
good
you.
Fresh air. Thank you very much. It's been lovely.
Oh dear, he's got You won't be able to talk at all. No, I'm not.
We're on.
Okay, this is Jim Quarmby, who started all this. Isn't
He's
it?
responsible.
Speak up and tell us what you did.
I still blame Ken. Without Ken, it wouldn't have gone.
Yes, but you put the idea in his head, didn't you?
I only gave him the idea,
Yes.
but he acted on it.
Oh yes, he did.
He acted on it, and your mother, she done a fantastic job.
She did, didn't she?
Yep.
So tell us for the tape who you come from. Who's your relative?
Albert. Albert was the youngest of the boys.
Yep.
And I'm the youngest of Albert's family. 2 boys and 2 girls.
And you grew up here?
Cootamundra. Who are you hunting away?
Just the other sister-in-law. So you grew up here in that way?
Cootamundra.
Cootamundra.
When Dad died, I was adopted by my mother's family.
Yes, that's right.
And they reared me, and I went to school at Cootamundra, and I then took on taxi driving and finished up at Junee and been there ever since.
And did you used to come up here for holidays?
No, not really. The first ones that I met in the Quarmby clan was some of Roland's family. Dick and Dick's sister at Schumann. They're both deceased now, but they were the first ones that I met. Then I got this family tree bud.
Uh-oh.
And I started collecting bits and pieces.
Here comes another one. They can't help themselves.
The good-looking member of the family.
Oh, Neil.
He just shattered the lens.
And so you've collected a lot of relatives now.
Oh yes, and I'm only pleased that the weekend turned out like it did.
It's been great.
It's been a great weekend.
Well, thanks to you.
Right?
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
And I'm the youngest child of Herbert's family. It was Ella, Cliff, Jean, and I'm the baby. And I was supposed to be a boy, but I turned out to be a girl. Sad for the family. And it's just been a joy to... oh, can you cut that out?
That's all right. No, we can do it later.
And my mother and father lived in Batlow, and they had to take me down to Adlong, to my cousin Maud's private hospital, in a horse's sulky, for me to be born. And Maud Lindbeck was a beautiful, beautiful nurse, a lovely cousin, loved her dearly. And she used to always say to me when she came to holiday with us in Canberra, Kath, never forget I was the first person to smack your bot. At any rate, it's been a wonderful joy to come to Batlow, a town I love dearly. It's my part of Australia. And to meet with all my relatives, lots and lots whom I've never seen before. It's just been a joy.
And we just...
Oh, yes.
I just want to borrow for a minute. Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
You just wanted to have another go at this, didn't you?
Yes.
You did. We saw that. She's got the bug. So, and who was the oldest Quarmby that you remember meeting?
Here today?
No, in your childhood. Like, who was around when you were young? That was sort of, what generation were they from?
Oh, well, I can remember a lot of my uncles. I can remember your grandfather, Rowley, and I used to have holidays with Uncle Rowley and Aunt Florrie in Tumut. And I'll never forget once, I was holidaying with them, and Bunty Watson, the editor of the local paper, rang the Quarmby household to find out my name, to put in the paper who was staying with Uncle and Auntie. And Dick Quarmby said, oh yes, I'll tell you the name of my cousin. It's Henrietta Ramsbottom. And Auntie Florrie was standing back, oh no Dick, no Dick, no. Oh, it'll come out in the paper, Henrietta Ramsbottom staying with Mr. and Mrs. Quarmby. She was horrified. Any rate, the proper name appeared in the paper. And
what about the mistletoe? What about the mistletoe?
Oh, the mistletoe. Yes, I was telling Helen about the mistletoe at Uncle Ezra's home. He used to have dances often in his lovely home at Honeysuckle on a Saturday night. And the boys used to go out and hang mistletoe under the door. And of course, naturally, I made myself stand under the door and I got many kisses and it was just beautiful. And I also remember very clearly my Uncle Walter and all his family, Dad's brother, and we were very, very close. And Dad and Uncle Walter were really good mates. And when they retired, they used to play crib every Tuesday and every Friday afternoon. And we couldn't get them to stop even to have dinner. And so it was a sad day for Dad when Uncle Walter died. And I became the crib player then to play with Dad.
Were you as good?
Oh, I don't know if I was good, Wendy. But we've talked about and
Got you on film.
And also I remember Uncle Fred and Aunt Mill and all their family. We were very, very close together. Used to see a lot of them. And
was Sarah around when you were young, or had she died?
I was 2 when Sarah died. And I didn't even know Richard.
No.
He died a long time before I was born, unfortunately, because I would dearly have loved to have known my grandparents, but I didn't have the luck.
You had a lot of aunties and uncles to take their place.
Oh, absolutely, Wendy.
Oh, what
yes.
What about Frederick? Oh, more?
Frederick? I'll talk about Frederick. Oh, yes.
What about traits?
Do you see any family traits now you've got us all together?
Having seen all the early ones, what's your understanding of the traits of the Quarmbys?
Well, I reckon your son is like Helen's son, Justin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What else? Come on, family trait.
Personality as well as looks.
Oh, well,
The blokes are good looking, aren't they?
I don't know about the blokes being good looking. Some lovely females in the family.
Wives they married in.
Absolutely. Wendy, such as you. Love you, Wendy.
Okay, I think I'll just cut it there.
I've noticed the curly red hair. There's a few men around with the thick...
It's a throwback, Jane.
Yes, where did it all come from?
The milkman.
Well, we're hoping you knew. Did any of your uncles have red hair? All had red hair?
No, I don't think my uncles did. No. All of your father had red hair.
Yes, yeah. So it must have come somewhere.
Grandfather. Yeah. Getting all the relatives mixed up. Your grandfather.
We know. Oh,
yes.
Thank you, Kath.
Thank
That's
you.
lovely. You think of Kath Uncut.
Oh, yes. My father brought us all up to be very, very strict teetotalers. But I found out from someone in the family that he and one of his brothers used to go behind the gum tree in Batlow and have a drink of whiskey, and he never told us that.
Just scan around. This is on the bottom end of the property. So over in that direction's Batlow. And over in that direction was his father's old place. There's a few of the grounds and the creek that ran up beside it. Get a view from another perspective. And this is from the creek side. Bit of an addition there on the side, which is falling over now. And this has been the other side of the house. The other side of the house under the trees. The old big awning's fallen down.
On the green there. There's still haven't got it through. This is the very old heap there, the door heap with fill that in there.
There's still a lot of ridging stuff left.
Yeah, isn't it good that it's supposed
It's
to
lovely.
be
It's a bit hidden here too, I think. Maybe.
Well, that's right, yeah, the angles haven't got
Coming in,
into it.
or even renovators tend to take old things, don't they? They just come and take what they want.
You can renovate that.
The old stings, the old stumps. Somebody been in there.
Here's the old bar.
Looks like a wreckage to me.
And storage room.
Factory's knocking right outside. Let's go through again. And that's a bedroom.
Into one of the old bedrooms here.
Now she's carrying a tent.
See the old walls there.
Hello.
The old fireplace. This will be the main living room. Rooms off. Looks like in that outhouse bit, that's the old kitchen, obviously tacked on so it wouldn't burn the house down. And some nice big ovens there, all bricked in. Oh, where they used to hang a mistletoe and she'd get kissed there. And on the other end is where the kitchen and so on is. Okay, start again, sorry.
Uncle Ezra had 12 children.
Yes.
And they weren't what you would call rich, and they brought all their children up not to take sugar in their tea. And once when I was holidaying up here, I was sitting around the table with 24 relatives, a few might have been friends, And I was the only one out of the 24 who took sugar. And Ray Quarmby said to me, Kath, I bet you 2 shillings you can't go without sugar for a fortnight. 2 shillings was a lot of money in those days. And I said, Ray, the bet's on. And at the end of the fortnight, I said, Ray, 2 shillings please, and where's the sugar? At any rate, I put sugar in my next cup of tea and I couldn't drink it. And I've never had sugar in my tea since.
Oh, wow.
So that's the story of Uncle Ezra's at Batlow.
And his table sat 24 and it was a billiard table or something?
Yes,
Sneak table.
yes it was. And they used to empty the room often at night and have a dance in the room. And Uncle Ezra was a great dancer, he loved it.
Okay. Which room was the dining room there when we looked into it?
It was in the middle of the house.
Okay, so it was in that main room where the fireplace is?
Well, I didn't go in today, but
Yeah.
they would have had a fireplace there for sure.
Yeah, I had a look at that before.
In Cole Batlow.
Yeah. You used to hold regular church services here as well?
Once a month, the minister used to come up from Adlong, and people from the neighbouring properties came around and had the church service, and after the church service, they had a bit of a dance.
Lovely.
And it was lovely. And do you want me to tell you about the mistletoe, or did I tell you about that before?
You told us about that one before.
Oh, I can't double up, that's boring. Beautiful walnuts, and everybody used to gather around to collect them and enjoy them.
Lovely.
And but it was an ideal place to come for a holiday. And I can remember standing out in the front veranda looking across the Tumut Road, and occasionally we'd see a car go past and the crows would sing. And whenever I hear a crow, even crowing in Canberra, I always think of the crows out here in Canberra.
Thank you, Kath. Does it make you feel sad to see it like this? It does, because I love that home.
The old tank.
Right of the hero.
Yep, go.
The box to the right of the fireplace. Well, apparently that's where Sarah died. She sat in the chair and died there after a church service. I've just found this out from somebody, so I hope it's correct. And Ezra died in the room behind the fire. And is that where the 12-seated table used to be, Mum?
Yes, I thought it was a much bigger room. But
because you were smaller and younger. That's why.
Yeah, I suppose. Ooh. Come on, Wendy.
Sarah.
So this is the front entrance here.
This is the front entrance.
The front entrance
here.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I thought. Yeah.
And the veranda was in excellent condition.
And it went
Yeah,
right around the
it's
house.
lovely wood at the moment, yeah. Oh, you just go right around the house, okay.
My wife Joan and I had the great pleasure of doing some organising for the reunion that we've just had. Now, we've been sitting here watching the film that's gone before this. First look we've had at it brings back a lot of memories of the weekend. A particular nostalgia trip to Honeysuckle is wonderful. It's such a shame to see the house as it is, but it brings back memories of my last visit there, which I'm just thinking would be 45 years ago, when I was about 22 or 23. But anyway, the thing has been done. That is the third of the reunions that the family has had. One 1971, one 1985, and now we've done it again in 2002, which is a fairly significant year because it is 150 years since Quarmby's arrived in Australia. We've had the reunion. We look forward to another one sometime in the future. Maybe it will be organised by some of the younger generation, maybe even the generation of Neil and Wendy, who were so kind as to record the film that we've just seen. We really do appreciate that because it brings together some of the real life of the reunion, which is not just cold hard facts and sheets of family trees and old photos, but it's all to do with people, and it's the people that are so important to us because they are all our family, and a family that we treasure very much because we are so proud of those who went before and established the Quarmbys in Australia. Thank you all very much for coming to the reunion. To those of you who couldn't come, who may see this film, then we were sorry you couldn't come. But please have a look at the film and enjoy it just as we did. And I say again, thank you very much.
that.